Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. In this video we're going to wrap up our discussion of Enscape by talking about actually rendering out the images from Enscape. So here in my viewport, as you can see, I've done a little bit of work between the last video and now, just kind of cleaned everything up, made it look a little bit nicer for rendering. I added in some overhead lights, even though I don't actually have those in my space, just to get better lighting throughout the scene so that things just pop a little bit better. And if you want to do that with yours as well, that's totally fine. Like I said in the last video, the thing that's going to make any rendering you do look good is the kind of lighting that's within the scene. So if you don't have a lot of artificial lights and you're just relying on the sunshine to kind of brighten everything up and make it look good, you're really going to lose a lot of detail and it's just going to look really flat. So anytime you can add in some artificial light sources, you definitely should. So for example, because I've added these light sources in, I'm getting additional shadowing on the walls, and I'm also able to see like additional details such as these panels within the doors, whereas before I just wasn't really seeing that at all. Also little highlights on objects like this little pineapple decoration that I have there. Just those little things are going to make it just look so much better. So anytime you can kind of fake it for the sake of it looking a little bit better, that's probably a good route to go. Just don't go too crazy with it where it's going to like change a design or something like that, or make your design appear as something that it's actually not. You don't want to be misrepresenting the final product to like a client or something. But in this case, for this assignment, it's totally fine to kind of fake things wherever necessary. So basically what I've done is gone in and tweaked some of those things, tweaked my materials, tweaked the visual settings so that everything looks as it should, added in those light sources, and then I started going in and actually creating some of those views like I showed you last time. So really it's just a matter of picking a location within the model and flying to that using your arrow keys, right? So I can use my arrow keys to move around, and then if you're sort of flying, so if you hold your middle mouse button and you kind of drag, you'll end up flying off of the ground. If you want to re-ground yourself, all you have to do is hit the space bar, and that's going to lower you back down to ground level, which isn't really nice. But yeah, you just want to go around and find locations throughout your room and set up some good views. So something in this corner is good. So I picked a couple spots that I liked, and once I liked them, I clicked create view and I created a couple of these views. So this is my first view that I set up. See if it'll go there. There we go. So there's the first view that I set up, and this kind of is just showing the entire overall scene. And then in my visual settings, when I'm setting up these scenes, if I'm going to do sort of a typical perspective view, I will usually set this camera to be 2-point perspective. Otherwise, if it's just on regular perspective, you can see it kind of looks a little bit worse, because 2-point perspective mode is going to take these vertical lines. So just watch the edge of this window. It's going to take those vertical lines and make them all perfectly straight, which kind of just makes your 2D or your regular perspective views look a little bit nicer when everything is perfectly straight like that. So I did that for those two images, and then also my field of view, I dialed that down a little bit. So the default for Enscape is a 90-degree field of view, which is up around here, but it kind of like distorts things a little bit, and it starts to push the boundary when you go up here. Like obviously that's really distorted and it makes the room look a lot bigger than it is. 90, it's fine, it's the default. It lets you kind of see more of the actual room, but like I said in one of my prior videos, human eye level, like if you're looking at something, your cone of vision, it's more down toward like 60 degrees, which means you're seeing a lot less of the room at once. So I kind of like to find sort of a happy medium where you're getting a decent view of the entire space, but it's also a little bit more realistic in terms of what you would actually see with your eye. I just think that makes it look a little bit nicer when you do that. So that's what I did. I kind of dialed that down just a little bit, and I would say as low as you can go towards 60, the better. But if you're starting to like lose a bunch of pieces of the image or the space that you want to show off, then obviously don't go too far with it. So yeah, I basically just went in and tweaked all my settings, got it looking the way that I wanted to, and then I set up those couple of views. So now I'm kind of ready to render out those two views that I had made. And then let me see here. Something else that I did, so I talked about lighting a little bit last week. I ended up recreating all my lights as the spotlight within Enscape. So if you remember back to when we created those light sources, for this one, I had created that as a sphere, and it was kind of creating like a really harsh shadowing effect. So I recreated that as a spotlight, and then I added in some of those IES profiles until I got one that I liked. All right, so those IES profiles are really good for making the lighting just look a lot more realistic. Okay, because if you're just going to rely on what comes with Enscape default, usually it's kind of look fake. So you want to kind of use those IES profiles wherever possible. Also for these overhead lights, these can lights I threw in there, I used IES profiles for those as well, but I used one that had really like a really broad like light cast range. So it's really throwing the light out with a wide cone, and it's really evenly illuminating the space. So I just kind of played with that too until I got one that was like a really nice general overall lighting scheme. But now that I'm ready to render these, I'm just going to go to my views. Now let me go back to this one. I'm going to go to my views, and then I want to go up to my visual settings, and then I want to go over to this section here that says output, and I want to make sure that these settings are the way that I want them. All right, so the main thing you have to worry about here is your resolution. So full HD is a really good one to always have on there, and that's what I would usually leave it as typically. But if you are doing something that's a little bit bigger in size, or if you know that you're going to want to scale the image up and put like on a big board, you might want to choose Ultra HD, and I like to use Ultra HD a lot as well, but it also depends on how good your computer is, because if your computer doesn't have really good graphics processor, it's going to maybe crash. So just try it, and if it works well, then keep it, but if it doesn't, you might want to switch to full HD. I typically wouldn't go below full HD though, because that's just going to get a little bit too small to be usable. You definitely want to have a higher resolution, and then if you have to scale it down, scale it down within Photoshop or InDesign afterward when actually placing it on your board. But like I said, stick to one of these. For this one, I am going to try the Ultra HD because I think my computer might be able to handle it. And then something else here, under image, you have this option here that says export object ID, material ID, and depth channel. So what this does is it allows you to edit your renderings within Photoshop afterward really easily. And I'll kind of show you what that does here in a minute after I render this out, but that's an optional thing. You don't have to use it if you're not going to do any post-production on these in Photoshop, but if you are, I would recommend turning that on. And the depth range, all this stuff, really we're not going to be using the depth map, this depth channel that it creates too much, so don't really worry much about that. Mainly what we'll be using is the object ID and material ID that it spits out. So yeah, I will show you that in a minute. We're also going to be doing panoramas as part of our final submission for this project. Okay, so I'm not going to have you turn in regular views like this. I'm going to have us do panoramas, but this is where you do that panorama control. So I'm going to want you guys to try to render these out as a high quality panorama. But if your computer cannot handle that, you might have to stick to normal, but high quality is just gonna be the best that can be. So I'm gonna go ahead now and I'm going to try to render this out. Hopefully my computer does not crash on me. We'll see if it does, but we'll give this a shot. And I'm gonna pause the recording while it goes just to minimize the chances of it crashing. But basically all I have to do is go up here to the screenshot button, and then we can either do a screenshot, which is just the view that you're on, or you can choose this option that is batch rendering, and that will do multiple views at once. So if I clicked on batch rendering, I can choose both of my views that I want to render out, and then I can click on this render selection button and it's going to render both at the same time. So I don't have to jump between them and then say render them individually. You can just set up all your views in advance, and once you have all of them how you like, you just come in here, batch render, and it's going to render these out. And then when you go ahead and hit render, it's going to take you to just a dialog box that's going to ask you where do you want to save the renderings at, and you're just going to choose the location where you want to save those, and then it's going to go ahead and it's going to render them and save that to them to that folder. All right, so I'm going to pause the recording really quick while I do this, and then I will hop over and show you the final product. All right, so my rendering's finished, and this is the folder where I outputted those renderings to. And as you can see, we have our 2 renderings, but then we also have all these extra images in here. And those are those additional images that I mentioned that are going to help us with our post-production if we want them. So I'm just going to pop one of these open really quick and see how it looks. And you can see it turned out really good, and it's really nice and clear. So then if I take a look at these other images that it outputted, so this is our material ID image, and basically what this does is it will take and associate any material that you have inside of your project, and it will tie that to just a solid color. All right, and this is going to allow us in Photoshop to overlay this image over top of our rendering so that we can select different regions of the image really easily. So let's say afterward you realized, oh, the wall color looks a little bit off. I want to tweak that manually inside of Photoshop. Well, with this, all you have to do is overlay it over top of the original, and then use your magic wand and select anything that is this greenish color, and that's going to select any portion of the wall for you automatically, and you can just add in your adjustments to tweak the wall, which is really cool. So this is the material ID one, but then we also have an additional one that it rendered out, which is the object ID. So this is going to break it up by object. So let's say I want to adjust the entire lamp or the entire clock, right? Or the entire computer. Anything object-wise that you want to select, this is what you would use this map for, but I don't really use it that much. I mainly just use the material ID one, and then we also have this depth one, but that's the one, like I said, that I don't really use all that much, so I don't really tend to worry about it. All right, so I'm going to close out of that. One additional thing that we can do, which I don't do a lot, but it can be useful, is render out a clay model view. So let me hop back over to my Enscape view, and I'll just show this to you with one of the renderings. But if I go in here to image, and then I go to the white mode, and I give it a second, and then I just turn off these outlines, and I set my background to be a white background. So now I have my clay model view, which is actually pretty cool looking, but this will allow us to do something which is called ambient occlusion, and this is kind of a fake version of that All right, but basically what ambient occlusion is it's just the kind of light and shadows in the scene. And what we can do is overlay this, we can multiply it in Photoshop over top of our base image, and we can kind of boost the contrast using this image right here, which is kind of cool. So I'm going to try that as well, and we'll just see how it looks. It could be something that you decide that you want to use going forward as sort of like a technique, but we'll give it a shot. So I'll let this render too, and then I'm going to hop over to Photoshop, and I'm going to show you just a little bit of post-production type stuff. All right, so now that that has rendered out, I went ahead and I opened up Photoshop, and now I'm going to take those images and I'm going to overlay them sort of on top of each other and do a little bit of post-processing. So if I go to File, we have this option down here under Scripts, I believe. Yes, load multiple files into stack. So you want to go to File, Scripts, load multiple files into stack. And then you can go to Browse right here. And then we want to find that folder where we saved our renderings. So within here, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do my first image, which is my actual just perspective rendering. Then I'm going to hold the control key and add in the clay model. And then the third one is going to be my material ID image right here. Then I'm just going to click on open. And that's going to add these files to this little stack right here. And then I'm just going to leave this as okay. And then, okay, well that one didn't work. Usually it will work. I'm not sure why that's not working. If it doesn't work, which it usually does, another thing that you can do is just go to open, and you can open all three of them individually like that, and then you can put them on top of each other manually. So again, not sure why that just didn't work that time, but maybe it will on yours. Anyway, basically what that would have done is just put them all into a single file, all with their own layers. But since that didn't work, what we have to do is go into these other ones. So I'm going to start with the material ID and unlock the layer, then grab it and drag it on top of the rendering tab and then drop it on. And then you just want to drag it until it's perfectly aligned like that. Then you can just close out of the file for the material ID. Then just do the same thing for this one. And again, the clay model one's totally optional. I just want to see if it kind of looks, we can do something cool with it. And then just close out of that one too. And then say no. But now we have all three of them stacked on top of each other, just like that. All right. And now something that we can do, like I said, with this clay model is set this from normal mode to one of these other modes, and it's going to allow us to just kind of have greater control over the shadows. So if I were to set this to multiply and then right click and add a, no, not right click, I want to add an adjustment layer, which is down here. So I want to add a curves adjustment layer. And this curves adjustment is going to allow me to modify the bright and dark spots in the image. So usually a typical curves adjustment is going to be like an S curve, like this, just very slight. And obviously that's like doing a lot to the image, but if you were to then go in and lower the opacity a little bit, not the opacity of the curves, but the opacity of the image itself. All right, let's undo that. Let me try that again. Let me try a levels adjustment. There we go. So levels adjustment works a little bit better. And then you want to you want to tie the levels adjustment to the curves. Okay. So if you hold Alt and Shift and then you click sort of in between the clay model view or clay model layer and that levels adjustment layer, you're going to get this little option to link the two together. So that's only going to impact this layer now. So now if we set that to multiply, and now if we go back to our adjustment layer, it should only adjust sort of the shadows. All right. And then you can go in and adjust the actual opacity of that layer to increase or decrease the effect. And you can also increase or decrease the effect of the adjustment as well. Right, so that's just something you can do to kind of boost the contrast of just the light and dark areas if you want to. Right, but again, you don't have to even do that at all if you don't want to, but it is something that you can do. So I might just leave it on just a little bit. But here, I'm going to drag my material ID layer all the way to the top of the stack. And then using this, I'm going to maybe make an edit, let's say to this computer monitor. All right, so you just want to use your magic wand tool, and you want to make sure your, let me think here. Yeah, you want to probably make sure contiguous is off, because if it's off, it's going to select that shade of color anywhere throughout the model or throughout the image. All right, so if I wanted to adjust everything that was this wood material all at the same time, and I click here, it's going to select it anywhere in the image. But if I have that on and do that again, it's only going to do sort of that island of green right there. So typically you just want to turn that off and make sure it's set to off, but you just want to sort of select anything that you need. So in this case, I only want to be selecting this computer screen, and you can see it's selecting some other stuff. So I'm going to actually turn that on and do the selection again, and it's just going to do the computer screen. And now what we can do, all right, why is this being weird on me? Okay, now we can do is hide that layer, and we just have the computer screen. And then I can go down to my base layer, and I can do Control C and Control V to paste in just a copy of that computer monitor there. And then I can mess with sort of the blend mode to get it looking a little bit more vibrant. So actually, instead of that, I might just adjust it with the levels adjustment. So if I go to Edit and Image Adjustments, Levels, I can play around with these sliders to increase the contrast and make that look a little bit brighter. So that's a little bit more what I'm looking for there. All right, and then I'm going to add a layer effect to it. So down here under effects, I'm going to go to outer glow right there. Okay, and then I'm going to sample a color. So I'm going to click on my color here, and I'm going to sample a blue color from the monitor itself. And then I'm going to kind of increase the size and spread a little bit. And the opacity. And then I might just tweak this down so that it's not like a pure shade of blue or a purely dark shade of blue. And you know, you just want to make it look like it's glowing a little bit, nothing crazy. So something probably around there works. Yeah, but that's just a very simple simple demonstration of like something that you can do using those material IDs. So now if I turn that on and off, you can see that looks a lot better. It looks like the screen is actually on and glowing and stuff. And then maybe if you wanted to adjust the wall, so if I turn contiguous back off and I select the entire, let's try that again. You gotta be on the right layer. So there, that should be all the walls. Now what you can do is you can do like maybe another adjustment layer. And maybe I'll do like a color overlay. And you can pick a color or something like that, and then you can set the blend mode to like multiply. And now you've changed the wall color. Actually, I think there used to be a color overlay option that you could do. Maybe it's under effects. Color overlay. So let me try that as an effects really quick, just see if that works a little bit better. I'm going to actually go back down here to the base image, and then I'm going to copy that so I get all the walls copied, and I'm going to paste those in, and I'm just going to call those walls. And now I can probably do, if I hold control and click on the image and then go to effects, color overlay, I can set the blend mode to overlay or multiply, and then choose a color here. Yeah, and you can do it that way, which is probably a little bit easier to manage than the other method. But that's just a really cool way of like being able to adjust the image. And then what we can do is if we see weird things that need adjusted, like this lamp right here for that light fixture, you can just zoom in on it and then go here and apply a layer mask to that walls layer. And then if I switch to paint, my paintbrush, and I paint with black, where's my paintbrush? I always forget where all the tools are when I haven't worked in Photoshop for a while. So there's my pencil. And plus they update it so then I lose track, because when I get into a new version of Photoshop and I haven't worked with it for a while and they move stuff on me, then it gets really confusing. So there's my paintbrush. I just want a soft paintbrush. And then you just go in and you paint out the portions of this that you don't want. And again, you could also use your lasso tool, right, to also do that. So this is a good maybe just review. You could also use your lasso tool. You could also use your magic wand tool. So if I just go to my actual base rendering and use the magic wand on that right there, and I set that to contiguous, and I do it again and just hold the space or shift to get all of those pieces within there. Then I can go back to my layer mask here, and I can go to edit, fill, and fill that in with black. That's going to hide that just like that. So now that that's not included anymore in there. All right, and then we can easily just turn that blue up and down if we want to, which is nice. But yeah, that's basically how you can use this to do some very basic post-production. That also works nicely for things like the background. So if you want to swap out the background with a different image, very easy to just select all those black regions. Not contiguous. There, all the black is selected. Then you can go in to your base image and you can apply a layer mask, and then you can invert that layer mask with Control I, and that's going to hide out the background. And then anything you put underneath of that layer, so if I go to edit and fill, and I'm just gonna do like a color for now, but you would obviously want to use like an image or something. So anything you put underneath of that is going to automatically just show up in the background, which is really nice. So yeah, so that's how you can do some very basic post-production using those maps. Now I'm going to hop back over to Enscape, and I'm going to talk a little bit about panoramas, all right, because that's really going to be the main focus of what we're doing. All right, so let me close out of this. All right, so we're back in SketchUp, and what we want to do is render out panorama views. So let me relaunch Enscape here. All right, so we're back in Enscape. What we want to do to set up panoramas is basically move our camera to the points that we want to capture. In our case, I want you guys to do at least 2 points within your project, because this is so small that we can't really fit much more. So if this were a bigger project and you had like multiple rooms, obviously you would want to do more than that. But since we're just doing one space, we don't really have to do a lot of them. So I'm going to put a spot over here sort of in front of the computer screen, and this will be my first location. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my visual settings, because if you look right now, this is the button to render out a panorama, but I'm unable to click it because I currently have my view set to 2-point perspective projection, and it has to be regular perspective. So if I go to visual settings, I just want to create a new preset for panoramas. So I'm going to create a preset called 3D panorama, 3D pano, something like that. And now I can play around with these settings. Actually, you know what? I'm going to duplicate this off of my, so see how it just kind of reset everything? I want to base this off of my 3D interior because I like how I have everything set there. So I'm going to right click and duplicate that. And then I'm going to call this one, again, 3D pano, like that. And it should just stay the same. So it looks the same now. But now I can go and I can set this to be a regular perspective. And then you can change any other settings you want, but I don't really want to. Also, you have this rendering quality, and I'm not 100% sure if this is only the quality it renders in the viewport or if this is the final output quality, but you can play with this. I'm just going to leave mine at high right now because my computer is going to kill me if I turn that up any higher. It's already very loud. But you can play around with that on yours if your computer's a little bit better and you want to try to render out something on ultra and then do it on high and see if it looks any different. But now that we have that, all right, I need to stay as focused as I can. I go off on tangents all the time. Now that we have that set, we can close out and we can go to our view management and we can set up a couple more pano views. All right, so now that I'm here, I'm just going to go to create view, and then I'm going to call this pano 1, and I'm going to link the 3D pano preset to it. All right, and then I'm going to click on create. So there's pano 1. Then I'm going to choose another location in my space, probably somewhere over here, maybe in front of this bookshelf, so that somebody could read the book titles, I guess, if they wanted to. And I'll just turn the camera around, and then I'll call this pano 2. So create view and pano 2. And then link 3D pano to that, and then click create. All right. Perfect. Now there's one more thing I need to change in my visual settings really quick before I render these. So go back to visual settings, go to output, and then make sure panorama resolution is set to high. All right, because that works independently of this. This is only for regular perspective views like the one that I showed you just a minute ago, but the controls for the panorama are just down here, so that has nothing to do with this. All right, so you want to make sure that is set to high there. Again, if your computer can't do it, make sure it's set to normal, but probably don't go down to low because it's probably not going to look that great if you can help it. All right, so set to high, close out of that. And now I can render these out. So I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing. It's literally just the exact same process as rendering out the other one. So you have two options here. You have mono panorama. That's what we're going to want to do. You also have stereo panorama. And this is if you have like a Google Cardboard headset. So if you ever use those VR headsets that you slide your phone into, you would use it for that. So you can render out stereo panorama and use it for Google Cardboard that way. If that's what you want to do and you want to try that and you have one of those, go ahead and do it and see if it works. That could be a cool thing to do for one of your like actual studio presentations, maybe if you have some aspect of a requirement of virtual reality in there. I don't know if they're going to ever throw that into the mix, or if you just want to impress somebody and you have one of those headsets that you can put your phone into, maybe render out stereo panoramas, throw those on your phone, put your phone into the headset, and then just open the image and then have them, it'll look like you're looking at it in 3D basically and that you're in the space. So you could do that. But what we're going to do is create one of those web-based walkthroughs, and those are all mono panoramas. So that's what we're going to do for this. And while I'm just here, before I move on, I just want to talk about the last option we have here. We're not going to do this for this assignment or anything, but this is the exe standalone option. You have two options, a web standalone or an exe standalone. Exe standalone, what this does is it basically takes your SketchUp model, or even in Revit, either one. It's going to take that and it's going to strip away all of the SketchUp aspect of this, and it's going to make like a launcher, sort of like a video game. So what you're seeing here, this viewport, this Enscape Office viewport, is going to be turned into its own file. this entire thing, all right? And that will let you launch Enscape and view the model without needing SketchUp or Revit or whatever you're using. So if I clicked exe standalone and I exported that out, it's going to make a little file on your desktop. And then you can copy that file over to any computer. And if that computer doesn't even have Enscape or SketchUp installed on it, you can double click on that icon and it's going to load up this model here. And you'll be able to walk around in it and look at it. So that's really handy for presentations. If you want to do sort of a live walkthrough like I'm showing you right now, you can do that, put it on any computer you want to. Like if there's a computer they have there for you to run your presentation off of, you can load this up on there, launch it, and then just walk around with the mouse and keyboard. Or you could even link a game controller to this. So if you play PlayStation or Xbox, you can sync your game controller to the PC. Enscape will recognize the game controller, and then you can go ahead and use that and fly around through the model. So when I worked at VoCon, we did that all the time. We had a VR room there, and they would just hook up Xbox controllers, and we bring in clients, and then we would fly through the model using our Xbox controller, which is really cool. And something else you can do is, so if you look here on these two views, I have these favorites set. So when you're creating a view, you hit this button here, this star. That's going to make it a favorite. Now, when it's a favorite, what you can do when you have an exe standalone or a game controller attached is it will assign your views to a button. So I don't know, maybe it's like the X button or something. So anytime you press the X button, it's going to cycle to the next view and it's going to jump you around automatically to these different views. So instead of you having to go in here and click on them to jump to them, right, and have Enscape move like that, it's linked to the button on the game controller, and you just hit X and it's gonna cycle through the views and jump you around. So that's also really cool. So if you want to mess with that and you have a game controller or something, you can do that and it's really cool. But we're going to be doing, instead of that, we're going to be doing the panoramas because those have a lot of really cool benefits, which I'm going to talk to you about in a minute here whenever I show you that on the internet. But I'm going to render these out and then I'm going to talk about that then. All right, so I'm going to pause the recording. I'm going to render this. All right, so now that my panorama views have finished rendering, what I have to do to actually access them, because they don't actually get exported in the same way traditional 3D perspective views get exported out, you know, like how my prior view went to a folder that I chose. These by default do not do that. So what you have to do is go back here into your main SketchUp window, and then over here on the right side, we have this button that says Manage Uploads. So if you go to that button and click on it, it's going to pop up this window here. All right, so here are the two panoramas that I rendered out. Okay, and you can get like a little preview of what they look like. But what you have to do at this point is go here and click on Do More and then save panorama to file. All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and save these. So we'll do Pano 1 and give it a second to save. All right, and then we'll go to the other one and we'll do the same thing. So this one is Pano 2. And then if I want to, I can bring these into Photoshop and I can do a little bit of editing to them. I'm just going to pop one of them open really quick so you can get an idea of what these look like, because they're going to look a little bit funny since they're panorama views that are flattened out basically. The only way that these are going to look like normal images is when you put them into the actual panorama application, which is going to see that they're panoramas and sort of generate them into those 3D views that you're used to seeing on like virtual walkthroughs. So I'm just going to open one really quickly to show you. And these are pretty high resolution, so it might just take a second. All right, so this is what it's going to look like when it loads in. So it does look a little bit weird, but that's fine. You can still do any edits that you want. And I don't know, honestly, if there's a way to do the whole exporting out a material map thing like I did with the other image, to where you could like select certain parts of the image and adjust it. But you could still certainly go in here and, you know, just do some like color adjustments and things like that. If you had me last year for the Digital Apps 1 course, if you remember, I showed you a plugin called the Nick Collection, and that's basically a plugin that has a bunch of like different filters that you can kind of apply to your images, and then it'll make them look a lot better. Sort of like an Instagram filter, but you can do a lot more with it. But what I like to do, I don't currently have that installed on this computer. I like to pop any rendering that I make open inside of Photoshop and then launch that plugin and then use that to tweak the image. Okay, so that's how I do a lot of my like color adjustments and things like that, just to make it look a little bit better. Here in this case, since I don't have that, something that I would maybe do is just go in and add in either adjustment layers or do some image adjustments. So things like the maybe like a curves adjustment or something to mess with the shadows and highlights a little bit. And then, you know, you can mess with like the saturation and things like that if you want to make it look a little bit more natural. So like if you just tweak down the saturation a tiny bit, maybe like -20, I'll do, just to make it look a little bit more natural. Then I'm gonna save this over top of the other one. Save. And I'm gonna pop the other one open really quick and do the same adjustments so that they look consistent. Okay. Then what I'm going to do is bring up the application that we're going to use to actually make our 3D tour with. Let me close Enscape really quick. And then I'm going to go to my browser. So there's a couple different applications that you can use to do this, and there's even more than these ones that I'm going to show you online, and you can kind of do it in whatever one works best for you. I'm just going to show you a couple that I've used in the past. The first one that I've used is this site called roundme.com, and this one is really nice because it's very intuitive and user-friendly to create these virtual tours. So if you want to try this one, you just go to roundme.com, and then you have to sign up here in the top right or something. It's going to ask you to create an account. You just need to create an account, and then you need to go up here and go to create tour to actually go ahead and create a tour. So I'm going to show you a couple that I've done. I know I showed you that one example, but I had a couple more on this platform that I could show you. So the first one was a kitchen that I did for a friend. So as you can see, I just have a few different spots within this kitchen, and we can sort of jump around to them. All right, but once you load your 3D panos into this application, like, it's just going to take them and make it so that you can look all around and jump from point to point. And another thing that's really cool, which I think I mentioned in the past but didn't really show you an example of, is you can add in these little information bubbles to sort of explain pieces of your images. I have a better example of that in my other one that I'll pull up here in a second. But see, all we're really doing is just going to create a few of these different points, and we're going to link them together with these little teleportation buttons, and we can jump around throughout the image, and that's really all we're going to be doing with these panos. If I go to my other example that I have, let me jump to one of these other perspectives. So you can see I have all these different information bubbles. So for example, this one is telling me the brand of this pendant light, and if you click on it, it's going to give you an image of the actual product, which is really cool. This one here is telling you about the paint color and the manufacturer. So this is Sherwin-Williams, and that's the color, and there's the actual swatch. This one is showing you the quartz material on the countertop. So it's really cool. You can really make this like a really neat interactive walkthrough for like a client or just like a school presentation. And that's why I like to use a platform like this to create a presentation with. Because you still, even though they're static panorama images, because you can teleport around, it makes it sort of feel more like it's like a live presentation and that you're actually walking around in the model. Another really good thing about using one of these websites to create these panorama tours is the ability to very easily display this on a variety of devices. So since this is all hosted on a third-party application through a web browser, all you have to do is send somebody this link, and then they can open that up on their computer, right? They don't have to have some crazy computer that's capable of running Enscape to view a 3D walkthrough of this quality. And this is a lot better of an experience, in my opinion, than just sending somebody those static renderings that you take from a few different angles in the room. Like, if you send somebody this, they can actually walk through the entire space essentially and get a much better sense of how everything is connected, and get a good idea of scale and stuff. And also the added ability to add in these information bubbles to further explain the design and what's actually going on. That just adds a whole nother layer of value on top of doing something like this. Now, one more reason why you might want to do this down the road for your own projects is the ability to integrate something like this into a design portfolio. So in the past, and I don't think they offer this course anymore. When I was there, we had a portfolio course where we would produce like a physical book of our work. So an actual portfolio booklet. Nowadays, creating an actual physical book of your portfolio is something that is a little bit outdated in my opinion. With everything going digital, it makes a lot more sense to set it up as like a web page where somebody can just go and they can view your work on the internet. So what you can do is sort of sign up for one of these free web domains. So like wix.com or something, one of these sites where you can create your own web page where you can customize it and make it your portfolio page, right? And with a 3D walkthrough like this, instead of just having a bunch of static images of your projects, you can actually take this, you can take any of these panorama walkthroughs you've created on this website, and you can embed them directly into the web page so that somebody could be scrolling through and they could click on any one of these tours and walk through it live inside of your web page for your portfolio. So this is just a very basic example of that. But if I were to go up here to this button and then go to share and embed, I can come down here and I can copy all of this code. All right, so I'm just gonna copy that to my clipboard. Here on Canvas, Canvas supports the ability of embedding stuff. All right, so this is very similar to what it would be like on a web page that you would create for your portfolio. So if I go here to edit this page I've created in Canvas, I can go on here and I've already done one of them, but if I want to add in the other tour, I just click on this little embed icon and I paste the code in, and then I click submit, and it's going to add it right next to it. So now if I hit save, and I'm going to publish these so that you guys can see them as you're going through this module. If I go back, no, this is where I want to be. All I have to do is just click on it now, and this is how it's going to appear on a web page that you would create. And you can see now I actually have the 3D tour from Round Me within Canvas, which is really cool, and it works the exact same way. You have all of your little thumbnail views of the different panos that you've set up that you can jump around between. You have all your little points here, all of your little information bubbles, and you can even make this full screen if you want to. So it's just like you're on the web page. So in my opinion, setting everything up on a cloud platform like this provides you a lot of value down the road, because when you're going to go get all your things ready to get in place for like a portfolio to apply for a job or something like that, if you have done all this work to set this up as a panorama project, it's so simple to just embed these into a web page and then just send somebody a link to your web page that you created with all these different tiles of all your different projects that you've created, right? And then they can say, oh, look, she's done a kitchen before. Here's what it looks like. And they can walk around it, and it's probably going to be really impressive because, not a lot of people are actually doing this. And I think this is a really good way to present your work. So that's why I'm like kind of showing you this. So now I'm going to kind of show you how we actually make this. All right. So, the other application, so that was Round Me. The other application is the one that I did that original walkthrough in. This is called Cloud Pano. So that's another one you can look into. Cloud Pano is good because they have a lot of features, but I will say to actually set up the tour, it's a little bit more complicated. Round Me is definitely more user-friendly, and Cloud Pano has a little bit more features, but theirs is a little bit more like convoluted. So you just want to go in here and you want to like do the get started free if you're going to try this, and that's going to allow you to make a few tours for free. And then you're actually in the creator mode, you can go in here. So this is, if I click on edit tour, that's going to take me to my creator mode. So this is basically what it looks like in there. And I'm going to let you guys try this one if you want to, but I think when I do the demonstration here in a minute, I'm going to show you how to do it on RoundMe because it's just a little bit simpler to set up, especially for this project that we're going to be doing. But it works the exact same way. You have these points where you can teleport around the space. And these are all the different views that I had rendered out in panoramas. But the cool thing about Cloud Pano in comparison to RoundMe is you're able to put in a floor plan. So what I did in this case is I have this floor plan view right here, which I'll show you here in a second. But you can tie all these points to teleport around to into the floor plan too. And you also have this brand kit thing. So when I did this for an architect on the side, I put his branding in here so that it shows up in the corner. So if you have your own like custom logo or something that you've made for yourself, you could put that in there and you could have it as your own little like branding on the actual presentation. Which is pretty neat. So then now that I have this all finished, I'm going to go to the publish, all right, to show you what it looks like finalized. So I have all my views down here at the bottom, and I can teleport around between them just like RoundMe if I wanted to. This is the branding up in the corner like I mentioned. But then we have this floor plan button, and if I open that, it's going to bring up a rendered floor plan that I made, and this was rendered exactly like how I showed you in last week's video, how I created that section plane that looks downward and I set it to an orthographic view. But all of those points that I have here in the background, I have tied to spots on this floor plan. So if I want to jump around to different areas throughout the space from a floor plan view, I can just click on them here and it's going to take me to those locations throughout the space, which is really, really cool. And that's something that would be very helpful for a design presentation, or if you're showing a client and they don't really understand floor plans. If you show them something like this, that's going to be a lot easier for them to wrap their heads around. All right. So that's something that's really cool about Cloud Pano, is the ability to embed a floor plan like this. All right. And if you want to do that, I'd be open to give some extra credit if you want to go that far with it, but definitely not required at all. So yeah, I'm going to show you how to set all this up on RoundMe. Okay, so what you want to do once you have your account set up is you want to go up to Create Tour, and that's going to ask you to upload those panorama files. So we're going to go here, and you can drag and drop them, or you can just browse to the location where you have them saved like I am doing. All right, so there's my 2 Pano files. And I guess it only supports JPEG, so the ones that I edited, I guess we're just going to not use. Unless I resave them as JPEG really quick. Save as JPEG. Yes. All right, set that to max quality. Save as. Where the regular JPEG? I don't know why it's not letting me save this one as a JPEG. It's weird. Let's try export. Export as. JPEG. All right, there we go. So now let me try that again. Highlight those and then open. Oh, my image size is too big. So I'm going to have to scale these down really quick. So let's see about that. So maximum size 10,000 by 5,000. All right. So I'm going to go back in here, image, and then image size. And then we're going to go to pixels. Okay, and you can see this is why we are not allowed to upload those, because these are way too big. So I'm going to set this to be 10,000, which is the maximum. There we go. Now it's set to 10,000 by 5,000, which is the maximum that we can do. And I just want to look at this to make sure it's going to downscale okay and still look sharp, and looks pretty good. So I'm going to click OK. And then give it a second to think about that. All right, so now File, Save As. And then this one, I'm just going to add a little small thing to that so that I can preserve my larger one in case I need it for something. And then I'm going to do the same thing to this one. So image size. And then we're going to set this to 10,000. All right. File, Save As. I don't know why this is not letting me save that as a JPEG. Save a copy. There we go. JPEG. And this one's going to be small. Okay, so hopefully that works. So let me bring this back up again and try that again. Browse. And there's my two small ones. Open. There we go. So now it's uploading. And I'm not going to subject you guys to having to watch it upload. So I'm going to pause this and bring it back when it's done. All right, so it just finished uploading, and now it's asking me to enter some information about this. So I'm just going to call this home office. All right, for your guys's, just put like the name of the room and then dash and then your name or something like that, something so that I can easily see whose it is, so I don't lose track whenever I'm opening these up to grade. And then you can type something in if you want, maybe some information about this is my 3D model I made in SketchUp and rendered using Enscape for my Rep in Vis III class, something like that, in case you want to save this for the future to put in your portfolio or something. And then you don't really have to worry about this other stuff because that's just for if you want to make it public and want people to find it. But other than that, I think that's all you really need to put in, hopefully. So now I'm going to save that. And as you can see, here we go. So now I can look around and I can kind of see what my panoramas look like. So I can zoom in and like look at everything on the shelf, which is really cool. You can zoom way out and get a really wide field of view if you want. So like that's when it's like crazy. Or you can zoom way in, which is more like a human eye perspective, right? Which is really cool. But basically, you can see I have that thumbnail down here for this view, and then I have this one. This is for the other panorama, and you can click on them and jump between them. Now, the trick is to actually link the two of these together. All right. Something else to note about panoramas is they aren't always going to be perfect. So as you can see, there's a little bit of a seam there. If you look at the top especially, sometimes you'll get like weird artifacting going on. I'm not quite sure why it's doing that. It doesn't always do that, like especially on some of my other ones. I think it's maybe less noticeable. You can still see it, but like to the degree at which it's going to do it on yours, it might not be that severe. But it's not a super big deal. So anyway, what you need to do first is let's give these titles. So I'm going to call this one like in front of computer. So you just want to give them titles that describe them well, because you're going to get an indication of the view name up here at the top, which is going to help somebody who's navigating around your tour. And then this one I'm going to call like room entry or something, right? Something like that. Not sure why my view just went black. I'm going to refresh this and see if that fixes it. Okay, so here's my room entry view and then my in front of computer view. And now what we have to do is link the two of them together. All right, so let's see if I can remember how to do this, because it's been a while. So I believe we have to use this panorama location button. Nope, that's not it. It's something that looks like that. You can also use this to replace a panorama in case you make a change and want to update it. You can just click on this to swap it out. Oh, and you can also capture screenshots. So if you wanted to render out just like a still perspective view, you could render everything as a panorama, and then from this export out just regular views, which is really nice. Where is this button? It's not that. Hotspot. I think that's it. So I'm going to go up here to hotspot. You got to click and drag it, and then you got to place it where that other view is. So right now I'm doing a hotspot for the room entry. So I'm going to put that near the door over there in front of the shelves. And then let me just call this one room entry. Okay. So this is, all right, so maybe I'm wrong. This hotspot is for giving details about things. All right, like I showed you in the other example. So that would be like I'm saying who manufactures this desk. So I could say Hayworth desk. You know, if you knew the name of the desk, you could put it there, and then you could upload, you could add a description, and you could put an image of that right there, and then even put in like a URL for their website of where that product is. So that's what that is. Is a Worth desk. Okay, create. So that's what that is. What I'm trying to find is the link button, which I am blanking on right now. Oh, that's what we have to do. Okay, so you have to create a portal. So basically I have to drag and drop the actual panorama view where I want it to go. So I'm going to drag this. There we go. Drag the view into the viewport and drop it where it needs to go. All right. So you can see now it stays in that spot, and it already has the correct name, room entry. And I can click Save Portal, and I can also set a custom starting view. So if you wanted, whenever somebody starts there, to be looking in a particular direction, you could set that right there and then click Save Portal, and that's going to process. All right, and you can, I believe you can click and move these around as well. But now you should be able, yeah, so if you click on it once, you can edit the location of it. So now that's placed. So I'm going to swap over to this view now, and I'm going to drop in a portal for my other view. So in front of computer, and I'm going to put that one right there. And custom view direction, we're going to start looking at the computer, save portal. There we go. So now we have both of the portals put into the walkthrough. So now that I've done that, right now I'm in edit mode because I have this little pencil icon right here. But if I were to click on this, that's going to switch me over to actually viewing the draft of the finished walkthrough. And now I can click on these and teleport between them. And I can see those little information hotspots, you know, how I want them. So you can add these to pretty much anything that you want and put in like the product info if you want to. If you want to do that for like your final submission, you can, feel free, but like I'm not going to make you guys, but it would just be a nice touch if you want to kind of mess around with the features and try that out. But that's pretty much how you do it. Other things that you can do with this. So here's where you do the share and embed. So if you wanted to embed this somewhere, you just click on that and then copy that code like I showed you earlier and paste it. I mean, there's a lot of other things that you can do with this. I'm not even quite sure what it all does. Oh, you can kind of change how the perspective looks. Okay, so that's kind of cool. You can set this to be an architectural projection, and that's going to do the thing where it makes it look like a 2-point perspective where all the lines are vertical. So now you can see all the lines look vertical and stuff, but when you like look at different angles, it kind of like makes it look weird. But that makes it look really nice for just rendering out things or just showing somebody for a presentation. And then if we wanted to do like a rendered view from this, I'm just kind of curious how that looks. So let me try to do the capture snapshot, and that's going to process. And then I'm assuming it's going to let me download that. Maybe. Not sure where those went. Somehow, though, apparently you can download those, I'm sure. Let's try this one. Anyway, the ability to do that is somewhere buried in here. All right. Okay, so I just looked it up really quick. All that does, which is pretty lame, is it just updates this thumbnail. So whenever I change my angle, it's going to update that little thumbnail right there, like that. So that's all that does, which is kind of annoying. But you could always just make this full screen and then, you know, take a actual screenshot of it as well. That would probably work just fine. if you wanted to. Trying to think if there's anything else that I need to talk about with this. Okay, so we're in draft mode right now. So whenever you're ready to finish this, we are going to need to publish that. So you just want to click on where it says draft and come down here and click on published and turn that on and then save that. And now if I were to go to this and then go to share and embed, I can copy the link to this and I can send that, I can email that link to somebody maybe, and they can just go there and it's just going to take them directly to that tour, right? And then they can sort of navigate around there, which is pretty neat. Other things that you can do, so they have a web VR mode, and what that does is it basically makes two different views side by side, and this will allow you, if you have like a Google Cardboard or something, to use that headset and view the walkthrough as if it were like a real VR 3D walkthrough, which is really cool. So if you want to do that for your presentation or something for Studio, it's a very simple process to just email this link over to your phone. And there's even a Round Me app for iPhone too and Android you can download, and you can just log in and pull up these views on there. Set it to web VR mode and then throw that in the Google Cardboard or whatever and just put it on, and then it's sort of like you're inside the space. It's just a very like cheap, easy version of doing virtual reality, which is really, really cool. So that's what that does. You can turn on auto rotation, which will just automatically make the view like rotate around whenever you're not touching anything. What slideshow does. I'm assuming slideshow is just going to automatically swap to the other view after a certain amount of time. Or something, or it's just going to swap between the tours that I have. I mean, they have these other projections that you can play around with too. I don't know what all of them do. But yeah, you can do all kinds of stuff. So that's essentially it though for the video. I think you guys probably get the idea. Again, you can use either this or Cloud Pano, whatever you want. Cloud Pano, it's a little bit more of a learning curve, I think. I used it for this project because it just worked a little bit better for everything I had going on, and I liked the fact that I could put a floor plan in there as well, and also his branding. That was a really nice thing that I could do with it. But the user interface is a little bit trickier to use with this. So, I mean, if you want to try doing it, you can. But I'm not going to really go in and demonstrate how to do it with this one. One last thing that you can do, which is pretty cool as well, if you put this over onto your phone, and this is not showing up here because I'm not on a mobile device, but on a mobile device, it's going to have this little button here, and I think, yeah, it's not this. It's going to have a button here that looks like virtual reality, but it's going to allow you to use motion controls on your cell phone. So you can basically use the gyro sensor in your phone and use that to look around. All right. So you can kind of wave your phone around and like move it up and down, and that's going to change what you're looking at inside of the panorama, which is really, really cool. So whenever I'm showing kind of people like the work that I've done, I like to pull it up on my phone and use that motion control and kind of like move my phone around so that they can like actually like see the whole space that way instead of like swiping with your finger to move around, which is really, really cool. And I think both of them do that. But yeah, that's going to do it for this video. So make sure you this week are finalizing your renderings and you're producing a virtual walkthrough like this. And basically your final submission is just going to be the SketchUp model, and it's going to be the URL to your tour so that I can pull it up on my web browser and view it. All right. You don't have to put in all of the other like little hotspot things, but I do want you to include these portals in here so that I can jump around between the different points that you've created. And you only have to do 2 different points within the room. All right. If you, for some reason, are doing multiple spaces, like connected off of this space, you can definitely do more than that and link all of them together. But for this assignment, you're only going to be required to do a minimum of 2 of these points. All right. So that's going to do it for the video. As always, please let me know if anything comes up or if you have any questions, and I will help you out.